We'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you. We will move on to our regular calendar, administrative, legislative update, as well as board reports. Mr. Lees.
Nothing to report.
Really? Really? Okay.
It works.
Yeah, you can tell your evaluation's coming up. Supervisor Haas, we'd like to start down at you.
Okay, well, I'd like to start by introducing my son and my two grandsons that are here. Greg, stand up. That's Hawes Farms right there, and then that's Garrett right next to him, and Cody right next to him. So welcome here today, believe me.
Thanks for
This is what makes our county is the next generations, right?
Future farmers.
They are, boy, you betcha. Awesome
Thanks, guys.
thing. And then I also want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, because we won't be back before the end of the year. In fact, this is my and Linda's last regular meeting. And in that, I want to thank all the employees of Shasta County over the last 16 years. It's been an awesome time. Great people to work with, great service to the public, and Shasta County is very lucky to have such great people, believe me. You've all been wonderful. And we've had a lot of accomplishments over those times. We've had great times, as I mentioned earlier, when John was up here, and we've had tougher times. We had a tough round after 9/11 for a while, and then things got good again, and then we had another downswing. And that's another reason for thanking the employees, because they played an integral part of keeping Shasta County sound and not spending money that we don't have, right? And over that time period, I served with actually 4 different boards. The first board I came in with, Dick Dickerson was on the board. And then he ran for the assembly, and then David came on the board. So that's 2 boards. And then later on, Linda and Leonard joined the board. So, and this is the present board today, and I have to admit, and I know I'm right, that this has been the best board right here to work with out of my whole 16 years. So, and that's nothing against the others, but this board works well together, has made some wonderful decisions, made a great decision prior to last June, and then were turned down. And that's my fear of what the future could bring to Shasta County. We have to think around here and think whether we want jobs. You know, we all complain that, oh, they're low paying, this and that, but a job is a job, and it's very important to the young people in this county to be able to stay here and continue like my family is. Not everyone has that opportunity, and I would hope in the future that we see the light and change our ways a little bit. Otherwise, it's going to become stagnant, and that beautiful business park out there will remain empty, and that's a sad thing, because a lot of investment has gone there. So I didn't want to talk too long, and I probably went too long already, but thank you all for all that you've done, and it's been amazing. And I will continue to be here. If you need something, holler, but I'm not going anywhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. And just so you know, we'll probably give you a couple more minutes on the 8th before you step off. So maybe if you forgot something, you'll give you
Okay,
one
you'll
more
give me a
chance.
couple
Just-
more minutes
Yeah,
on
not 2
the
minutes, because
Well, just make sure it's a couple.
Okay.
Thank you.
Supervisor Keel wanted to comment.
Supervisor Hawes, it is also my understanding that you were on the board when Supervisor Baugh joined us, right?
That's right. Supervisor Baugh, I'm sorry. I missed him.
That's okay. A lot of people have forgotten me.
No, he came on there too. We've had several boards, haven't we?
Thank you, David.
But I told him he was the best, right? I didn't forget that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Les.
Okay, Supervisor Hartman.
Wow. Yeah, it's been an amazing opportunity to represent the county of Shasta, and back at my time with the city of Shasta Lake as well. I've been proud to represent our community and work with you and work with the staff. Supervisor Hawes said it's been a wonderful team, from all the employees up to everyone up here. I absolutely believe that, as Supervisor Hawes said, this has been an amazing board, an amazing team, administrative team. We have always, in my mind, done what we feel is best for the community as a whole. And we may not always agree, we may not always be popular, but I know that we've done what we have felt is right for the community as a whole, and I respect all of you for that. And I thank you for your honesty and your hard work and your friendship. So it's always been fun. Larry always makes us make the toughest decisions with a smile, and I appreciate that. And I just want, Larry, don't ever forget Castella. But I know the county is in good hands. We've made it through some tough times. But we, through Larry's leadership, have set ourselves up as a community and a county to be successful and survive. And I'm proud to have been a part of that. So thank you.
Supervisor Hawes.
Well, I just want to introduce one more person that will be up here very soon, Pam Giacomini, sitting right back there, and she's been doing her homework very well. I don't think she's missed a meeting all fall. Awesome. And of course, Larry and Ruben, you're awesome too. You know that. So thank you all.
I'd like to ask all of us to show our appreciation of our two outgoing supervisors.
Yeah.
Now, it's true, Larry, that lunch is on them, right? Yeah.
Good.
Before I pass down to Supervisor Ball to go next, we should also introduce Bill Chappelle, the other supervisor-elect. Bill, thank you for coming to the meetings as well.
Okay.
Supervisor Ball.
Thank you, Chair Modi. And I'm going to save my thank yous to the two of you for the official January meeting, but I will say briefly, you two are amazing. And I'll share more personal comments in January. For my individual board report, last Tuesday I represented both Shasta County and the 32 members of the Rural Counties Organization at the Board of Forestry hearing. To little avail, they moved ahead, of course, to enact what I and the rest of this board and the rest of the 32 counties represented as an illegal tax, moving forward to charge us for services we already have. And in the end, as I presented to them one more time, these fees will be eaten up through mostly administration from their own calculations through at least the year 2017, and they've recently begun to talk about the fact that it may extend farther than that in terms of administrative cost. As government has a tendency to do, expenses seem to increase, not decrease, with the state of California. Anyway, we were well represented at the state level, and I was happy to do that for RCRC. The RCRC meeting, I have presented for your benefit and for the benefit of the public just a short recap of the recent RCRC meeting where we were introduced officially to the new CSAC director, Matt Kate, as well as appointments were made. I would note that I was asked to serve as chair of the California Local Government Finance Authority for RCRC, and continue to believe that it is money well spent on Shasta County's behalf for representation in the Rural Counties Organization. LAFCO meeting with Supervisor Kehoe as well went very well, and I'll just leave it at that. I want to congratulate the community of Shingletown on their annual tree lighting. Another great presentation by the Shingletown Activities Council. We thank you for your community efforts. From the Baugh family to our Shasta County family, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and blessings on this new year. God bless you all.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chair Modi. I attended and participated in the Community Action Board meeting on December 5th, where that board is going to be reconstituted, maybe a refinement of the objectives, and that material is upstairs for your perusal. I would like to break precedent in these board reports, at least from my perspective, and comment on an editorial, a well-written editorial in the Record Searchlight of a few days ago. In that editorial, Sharon Haywood, supervisor of the Shasta Trinity National Forest, was commented or complimented on her flexibility and her willingness to listen to the public relative to OHV roads and the opening of those roads to the public. And I think that praise is well deserved. However, in my mind, it needs to go a bit farther, because that flexibility that Ms. Haywood demonstrated was due in large part to the actions and the hard work and the professional conduct of Mr. Pat Minturn.
Very true.
Pat worked on the weekends to put together that proposal for us and that analysis. And that was the bedrock for the decision that the Forest Service made. And so to Mr. Minturn, I think we should congratulate him for that outstanding work. Mr. Lees?
Yeah, well, I would certainly concur, and I just want to reemphasize that this was time, I mean, he has his full-time real job also, that he was squeezing in, so it was out of hours and a tremendous amount of work. But I wanted to bring back and remind us, there was a lot of controversy about the path that Shasta County was taking, and from the very beginning, this board says, we want results, we don't care what you call it, but we want the roads open. And that's what we're going after. And Pat certainly took the lead in making sure that he had the data and the information so that not only this board could make great decisions, but the Forest Service could also make a good decision based on data that he collected. And so, I mean, here's a man that loves this county and puts it first, and I think we owe him a great debt of gratitude.
Yeah, I want to be clear in that in no way should my comments be construed as diminishing the role that Ms. Haywood played, but I would also like to elevate the role that Mr. Minturn played in this important benchmark decision.
I'm supposed to follow that?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
You know, I'll comment on that, and then I'll go to my other ones too. I wholeheartedly agree with your statements, Supervisor Kehoe, with both regarding Ms. Haywood as well as Mr. Minturn. I think what I would comment on is this thing got off to a rocky start, and I think what's the most important lesson here is in the end, both sides let cooler heads prevail, sat down, and made some good decisions for the general public overall. And I would compliment my fellow board members as well as Mr. Minturn in that we all stood together saying we want to have some positive results, and we wanted to have that. We pushed forward to that. So I think what it really did is sort of hopefully set a better example of how we should get along with fellow agencies to come together, even though we have differences, but solve them in a way that are responsible and cordial and respectful. And I think that we all got to a good result, and I think that's I was very pleased to see. And I appreciate the paper making comments that we got there as well. All of us got there. To follow up on my report, just had a chance to attend the Happy Valley Dare program graduation. It's always great to see young kids, fifth graders, who recognize at this point in their life that drug and alcohol and smoking. It was interesting, we had that presentation today. They've added that to the DARE program to recognize the dangers of those things and see their smiling faces when they get those certificates and know that they're moving on. Had a chance to attend the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. I think Supervisor Hartman was there, as well as Mr. Lees. Chance to honor the remaining survivors that we still have here in Shasta County. I think it's down to 5 now. It was a great ceremony, well attended. And then I just would like to point out that at the Northern California Veterans Cemetery, their annual wreath laying occurs on December 15th at noon. It's their chance to go out there where they will put a wreath on every single marker that's out there. It's an annual event that's a great way to honor our veterans who've given to us. And if you have the opportunity to go out there, they welcome your participation as well. And I will, as well as Supervisor Boss said, save my other remarks for my colleagues at our future event. But I want to echo your comments, Mr. Haas and Ms. Hartman, that it's been a great board to work with, and certainly you guys have been a big part of that, so thank you. Moving on to R6, a resolution for the Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District Annex. Ms. Dorney.
Megan Dorney, Administrative Analyst, County Administrative Office. The item for your consideration is a zero-tax resolution for the annexation of 19 parcels consisting of 88 acres into the Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District. This is a process in the LAFCO, in government code for LAFCO. And so the annexation of these lands would allow for these properties to gain ACID water. There's zero property tax changing. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Supervisor Haas.
Just a comment, I think this is great. We've lost, or ACID has lost over the years, and I think it's important that they start getting some of that back to remain viable, because it's very important to Shasta County, believe me. And if you're a farmer trying to irrigate, that's the best deal on water, believe me. If you've got to buy PG&E to pump your water, which I do, and buy diesel, it's very expensive compared to this. So this is a great thing, believe me.
Yes,
Thank you for doing this.
The properties were actually previously in the ACID district. There was the United States Bureau of Reclamation, they changed it a few years back, and so this actually brings those parcels back into the ACID.
Super.
Questions or direction of the board? Supervisor Baugh? Yep.
Yes, thank you, Chair Modi, and echoing Supervisor Haas's comments, this is a positive step. I will move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Dorney. Item R7, consider adopting resolution which for Mayor's Memorial Hospital District annexation. Ms. Dorney.
Thank you. This one is for 75,000 acres, and it is property that is 5 to 20 miles southwest of Bernie. The Mayor's Memorial Hospital District would like to annex these properties into their hospital district. Again, this is a resolution, no property tax dollars will be changing. None of the districts will be affected by it. Basically, everything stays the same with the exception of these parcels will now be annexed into the Mayor's Memorial Hospital District.
Questions?
Comment.
Supervisor Haas.
Well, just a comment. I think this is a very important for the viability of Mayor's Memorial Hospital, too, so it's much needed.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Ms. Dorney, thank you for your presentation this morning. I have a question relative to Area 2, where it
Yes.
says it is approximately 335,000 acres and includes area located exclusively in Modoc and Lassen counties. And then on page 2's third paragraph indicates that Lassen County has chosen to not adopt the zero tax exchange resolution. Can you give us background on that decision on the part of Lassen County?
I know that it has been presented twice for the Lassen County Board of Supervisors. Supposedly, they're still in negotiations with mayors, but they have chosen at this time not to adopt a zero tax exchange resolution. MODOC has, but not Lassen.
And Supervisor Kehoe, if I may, because I had the same question, and the other half of the question is, how does that affect this?
Right.
It doesn't affect Shasta County, but what mayors will have to do if Lassen County does not approve the resolution is they'll have to change their application and remove those properties. They won't be able to annex them.
This is not a debilitating action that Lassen County has taken?
You know, I'm not sure.
Okay.
If I could weigh in on that, Lassen County had additional questions originally when it went to their board. My understanding is that it's not that they voted it down, they determined to table it for a different time to collect more information. In answer to your question, Supervisor Kehoe, it's a hard question to answer because it certainly would impact Mayor's Memorial and their ability to complete what they're trying to do. But does it mean that they couldn't go forward in some fashion? Yeah, they absolutely could. Could they still consider the Shasta? Yes. And by the way, I think another important component of this, as this goes forward, this is just, what the action we're asking the board to consider today just takes it to LAFCO. At that point, LAFCO will do the study, the research. They'll notify all residents and all people involved and provide opportunities for additional feedback. Whereas we too, as a government entity, can provide additional feedback if we see changes or something occurring out there.
Very good. Thank you.
Is there a downside to not, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me. I'm trying to figure out why you would not approve this.
I don't see a downside in that because, again, we still have opportunities to voice our comments as things get, with LAFCO, as things become structured. I think it's a way, as Supervisor Hawes mentioned earlier, there's going to be special districts coming to us all the time, basically trying to survive, and they're looking for ways to be able to do that. And if we as a county government can help them without a downside to us, without us losing the resources, then I think it makes great sense. And keep in mind, a lot of times partnerships with these organizations, they're actually providing services for us also. And I would mention that the CEO for Marist Memorial Hospital, Matt Reese, is here with us in the audience today if we have any specific questions for him. But I don't see the downside at this particular juncture.
Supervisor Hawes?
Well, maybe he could come and tell us kind of why Lassen's thinking this way. Our assemblyman, now he's sworn in, Brian Dally, lives in this part of Lassen County, and Lassen County is just a few miles from Mayor's Memorial Hospital, and I think they would be very interested in having that hospital stay there. So would you please come forward and maybe you can say why they're not jumping on this, but I will lobby Brian, and he's well connected with that board, so.
Yeah,
don't
the first
understand
time, excuse me, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
You would give us your name, please, too, for the
Yeah,
record.
Matt
Thank you.
Reese. I'm the CEO at Mayor's Memorial Hospital. I appreciate this opportunity to speak for you. The first time that they postponed it, it was because Brian Dally was not present at the meeting.
Okay.
The second time is because Modoc Medical Center announced that they were closing down the ambulance service in Ayden. And so what we're looking at is there a possibility that there could be some tax exchange on their side and we can keep the service viable there in Ayden? And that's a ambulance service that services Lassen and Modoc counties. Modoc County, Modoc Medical Center has been funding that in the past. Lassen has donated some equipment and other things, but they're looking at what services they can continue to provide as far as ambulance services up there. So we've got a meeting lined up January 14th with them and several of the people that are interested to trying to see what we can do.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kehoe?
I had a question to Ms. Dorney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Reese.
Thank you.
Ms. Dorney, then, this contemplated action merely puts it on the table for LAFCO consideration.
Yes.
And there will be a due process and public hearings and everything at
Exactly.
the LAFCO level.
Yes, that's
Thank you.
correct.
I'll move approval then.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Lees, perhaps, Mr. Lees, perhaps you could talk to your counterparts and just keep up to speed on it. Item R8, an agreement with BI Incorporated for our day reporting center. Chief Foreman.
Chairman Modi and members of the board, my name is Wes Foreman. I'm the Chief Probation Officer and the Chair of the Community Correction Partnership. Today, with your approval, we will be one step closer to achieving our goal of operating the Community Correction Center. The CCC is a key element in the Shasta County's Public Safety Realignment Plan. The Community Correction Partnership Executive Committee was unanimous in their decision to contract for services to serve a select portion of the offending population. The CCP came to this conclusion after researching and visiting day report centers in other California counties. The road to opening the CCC has not been easy. The path included a request for proposals from which BI, Behavioral Interventions, was one of 4 competing companies. Their reputation and experience in running day report centers was a reason for awarding them the contract. County personnel and probation immediately began the search for a suitable location. Eventually, a location supported by the county and the city of Reading was chosen. A signed contract between the county and BI will formalize our commitment to working with offenders with the highest criminogenic need and requiring the highest level of treatment. The DRC will be one of the services provided at the CCC. Once in the DRC, each offender will receive a wide range of services, beginning with an orientation, progressing through 3 phases, and culminating in an aftercare reentry program. Outcomes will be monitored and reported to probation regularly to assure positive results. Once open, the Day Report Center will support an average daily attendance of 100 offenders. We expect to reach that level within 3 months of opening. In closing, we are very excited to be making this significant step forward. However, before taking questions, I need to inform you that there is one error in the contract. If you will refer to attachment B of the contract, which refers to the space agreement, section G.
Perhaps you'll let us get there first.
Yes, okay.
I see some numbers at the bottom of the page at 23 or 32. Can you give us a hint as to where that might be?
This is, this would be the after, there's 31 of 32, so it would be page 32, and the, which is the very last page.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so this is referred to as the agreement for use of space, and it would be on the back of that. It would be under letter G. Section G was mistakenly left in the contract. It should be eliminated per conversations with BI yesterday. To confirm it, the cost of phone and data services is considered part of their regular doing business and should not have been left in this contract.
So we would strike section G and then re-letter H and I to be G and H. Is that would be correct, Mr. Cruz?
Yes. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Questions of Mr. Foreman? Supervisor Bob.
You stated that there would be 100 average daily attendance. Is that duplicated or unduplicated? Will that same people or people that will come and go? What are we talking?
That excuse me, that will be unduplicated, and that's a number that would be rotated. As people move in, the number will go to 100. Our intent is to keep it to an average of 100. As individuals graduate, a new one would be added, so they will maintain a population of 100 continuously.
So there may be a waiting list then?
There could be a waiting list, that's correct.
Okay.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
I'm not
Go
there
ahead, I'll
yet.
defer to you, Mr. Ball.
Thank you.
Quicker.
I suppose so. You anticipate that even if the correction center is not open, that this program will begin immediately? Where would that begin without the correction center?
Well, the actual opening of the center, which will house the DRC, is dependent upon our lease agreement with the owner of the property. My understanding is that that's very close to being done, and we hope to be able to bring that to the board for approval right at the beginning of January. Once the lease agreement is signed, then the construction or the fixed phase of that will take place, and depending on how long that takes, then BI and the rest of the county individuals going into the center will enter and open the center.
Chief, I'm reading from your quote in the record Searchlight. It says that even if the lease ends up falling through, that BI would still run the day reporting center at another location. What's that referring to?
Well, first of all, I'm not anticipating that it's going to fall through, so I'm being optimistic. Should that happen, however, then we will work very closely with BI to find another location and become operational.
But what does that mean, at another location? Is there some place it can work immediately because this contract begins immediately, or we simply put off using the resources of the contract?
Well, the contract will be signed, if you approve it, will be signed today, but what BI needs is 60 days to become operational. They are informed that the contract potentially would be approved today, but they are aware that this may be delayed depending upon the signing of the lease. And so the only portion of the contract that may be a commitment to is any implementation activities that they do, for instance, hiring individuals. But the actual service that we're providing to them, the $45,000 a month for these individuals, would start until the day it becomes open.
Well, let me just get to the bottom line. We've had many delays in the contract, not being negative, but should we have additional delays, are we going to waste county money and not be able to recover county resources? Are we spending money with this contract should we not have a place to house them?
Well, in my opinion, the only waste of money, I don't consider it a waste, however, would be the efforts that they're putting into it in hiring staff and getting prepared. I'm extremely optimistic. My commitment is to opening the Day Report Center, and so I'm fairly confident that first of all that this lease agreement is going to go through. Should it not, that we will immediately do it as fast as we can to find another location.
I have some more questions for you, but with Chair permission, let me redirect that question to Mr. Lees, because I'm not getting an answer that I understand. Are we going to spend money from the county?
I think, if I could rephrase the question, make sure I understand you correctly, it appears that we are starting and entering into a contract with BI at date of signing, which will be today if this is approved. Yes. If that is the case, we start spending money right away. If we do not have a place to provide the day reporting center because the lease is delayed for construction or does not go through, are we going to be wasting money paying to BI, spending money on BI when they're not in a position to deliver the services to us?
That's the question.
That's
yes.
the question. So if I may, based on what I know, and please, you are the expert here leading this boat, so please correct me if I don't understand it right. My understanding is BI would be in a position to have to ramp up to be able to start providing this service, and that's what the initial payment would be for. The real question is if we get delayed for some reason for 2, 3, 4 months down the road, are they going to start billing us and providing, sending us invoices for salary cost when services aren't being delivered? And is that the...
That's what I'm trying to
Okay,
determine,
so
yes.
then I'll...
Okay. Well, Chief Foreman, just County Council wants to weigh in. Is this the proper time for you to...
Yes, and I don't know all the details other than I just want to point out for Supervisor Baugh and the other board members, there is a provision in the contract under Section 6 of the term of the agreement that the county does have the right to delay the start date of this particular agreement if there is a delay in construction on the negotiated lease space. So there is this built in here to say that we can delay starting this if there's commensurate delays in construction of the lease space where they will be housing there and providing their services.
Thank you for your clear answer. I appreciate it very
Chief
much.
Foreman, that
It
gets
is
your
fair.
answer that
Thank
you're
you for,
looking
for clearing that up. There is that clause in there, and BI and I have had conversations. They are aware that this agreement or this contract is going forward, but the lease agreement is dependent upon us getting started, and they are aware that that's going to be later.
Okay. So let's talk about the corrections center, and I appreciate your optimism. I do. Last week during your monthly report to the board, you mentioned one of the reasons for the delay was the permitting process with the City of Reading. In a check with the City of Reading and through our own department, Connie Regnell's department, there have been no checks issued for permits, nor permits submitted to the City of Reading. So I would like to know, how are we being delayed by the City of Reading in permits, if we have yet to apply for them and we haven't requested any payment for permits?
Well, my comments were intended to indicate that once the lease agreement is signed, what's currently being proposed right now is that with the lease agreement that the owner, his contract will actually do the construction of the fixes within the building. They will then apply for the permits. What I was referring to in the delay or the potential delay is that once the agreement is signed and that promises that is moved forward, then what may prevent a delay is the permitting process. The construction of it is fairly straightforward per that contractor's opinion. It all depends on how soon we can get the permits ready and finished so that it can begin the constructions. Therefore, when I represented last week is that there would be a delay of a month. It was based upon a concern that how quickly could we actually, or that contractor could actually obtain the permits to get started.
Thank you for your clarification. I would say from my past experience working with permits, your month delay may be entirely optimistic. It could be much more. The next question I have is if we could go to the thought of the various bids. Did I miss, now I did receive a printout through Mr. Lee's office of the various bids, their scoring and so forth. Did I miss that somehow in our staff report, or was it not there?
It was not there, no.
And I believe that it would have been important to include this because of the tremendous difference in price for me to be able to consider it. Normally, a small difference to me doesn't seem to be tremendously important, but when you have one bid that comes in at less than half of the price of another bid, I think the board report would have been more thorough if it had included it. To receive my information through the local newspaper rather than through a packet supplied to the Board of Supervisors does not seem to be a good way to go about it. Would you clarify for me then which information is correct? I have a sheet from Mr. Lee's that scores BI at 361 and 600,000, and I'll go down to Sentinel at a 288 scored and a price of 260. Those amounts don't seem to agree with the reported amounts in the Record Searchlight. So if you could, did you see the article?
Yes, I did.
Could you clarify for me the difference? And I understand the scoring difference, and maybe clarify who participated in that scoring and what there was in terms of perhaps lacking that would cause us to go for another company that's more than twice the expense.
Well, first of all, I would say that the other quoted numbers that you have, I am not aware of, and I won't be able to speak to those. I can mention the numbers that I have based upon the review of the proposals yesterday and the information provided to the paper. I can go through those.
Well, I would appreciate that. The one that seems to be most in contrast, and again, Record Searchlight may be an error, it says a $451,000 bid came from a New Jersey company. I don't see that listed on the list I'm looking at all.
So if I can go through, there were four companies that provided proposals through the RFP process. One of them, by the name of Sentinel, their base operation is located in Irvine, California. Their full year service cost for 50 offenders was $259,265. They had limited experience with running day report centers. They mostly sold electronic devices such as GPS devices or home electronic monitoring anklets. The second company that submitted a proposal was a local company, Wright Education Services. Their bid was $671,000 for first full year for 50 offenders. It was $671,068. They had no experience in running day report centers. The third company, Behavioral Interventions, their base operation is out of Boulder, Colorado. Their bid for 50 offenders for first full year cost was $590,772. They have tremendous amount of experience in California running day report centers. There are at least 12 other counties with day report centers run by BI, and they have a good reputation. The fourth company was Community Education Centers. Their company is located in West Caldwell, New Jersey. Their bid for 50 offenders on the first full year cost was $451,454. They had no experience running DRCs, had limited experience in working in California, with most of their experience working with prison reentry and parole offenders. And so based upon the bid process, BI was awarded the contract primarily based upon their reputation and experience in running day report centers and working with the probation offender population.
Was there a broad team that helped on the evaluations?
Yes, there were 4 individuals, myself being one, a probation division manager, our CFO, and 1 member from the Mental Health and Human Service Agency, a mental health clinician.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor for now.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Mr. Lees, was this cost information included in the package that we received?
No, it was not.
Okay. I am troubled by that. I'm greatly troubled by that, and I agree with Supervisor Baugh in his observations. Let me address several aspects of this contract that I'm concerned about. But the first thing I'd like to ask a comment on is on page 1 of 22, under definition, section 1, in items C, D, and E, the staff report outlines the important work being undertaken by the Day Reporting Center. And then I refer to section 1A, where it says business day. For the purposes of this agreement, business day is Sunday through Saturday, excluding county holidays. So I guess folks don't need the services on county holidays?
Well, my understanding of the definition is referring to a business day such as my business day. Behavioral BI in running the Day Report Center will be essentially a 365-day program, so they will be running on Saturdays and Sundays.
But the contract doesn't say that. It says excluding county holidays. So
In the
it
definition.
seems to me, under definitions, it seems to me if we're talking about a full service delivery system for these folks, we ought to be open all the time. Well, that's observation number 1. Observation number 2, and this, quite candidly, I find unacceptable. This agreement contemplates, during the course of the agreement, to spend $2,714,450. What I am troubled about here is that in reading over this contract, I see no hard targets relative to accomplishments, relative to results. I see a plethora of statements, both from BI and the staff, about activities, but I don't see quantifiable hard targets for what we're going to accomplish here. And I will tell you candidly, I'm not going to support any agreement that doesn't include hard targets. Let's go to the next, and this is a question that I'm going to direct to County Council. I refer you to section 15, page 17. The title of that is Access to Records, Records Retention. As you recall, last week, item C2, the board took action on new directions for Hope. And we forwarded to the bankruptcy court $26,468.63 which was to reproduce client records and cost data. My question of you, Mr. Cruz, is Section 15, does that adequately protect the interests of the county so that we will not have a replication of what we had with New Directions of Hope?
The provision there is a standard provision that we have in here. I can also have, David Yorton is is present. He's reviewed the contract as well. And I'll defer to him to allow him an opportunity to comment, if I may.
David Yorton, Senior Deputy County Counsel. I was also involved in the New Directions to Hope issue, and I think there's a significant difference between New Directions to Hope and the documents here. With New Directions to Hope, we were talking about medical records and client privileges that we needed to deal with. And so what happened in that circumstance, there was an immediate bankruptcy, and the concern was over the destruction of medical records. So we went in and photocopied those for protection. Under a circumstance like this, I don't think we're going to have the same confidentiality issues, and we would be able to just take the records, if you will, as opposed to the issue with New Directions to Hope, where we weren't in a position to be able to do that.
Mr. Yorton, who owns the records?
We have access to the records. I would say that they're required to retain them, so they're in possession of those records. Arguably, they're their records, but we have a right to them.
Okay. We don't own the records then, is that correct?
We have access to those records.
All right. All right. So you see in this section that the county is adequately protected. Is that your legal opinion?
Yes.
Thank you very much. The other questions I have, and I guess we're not going to be in a position to answer them because there aren't any hard targets relative to results and accomplishments, but if there were, what are the county evaluation standards? That's one thing. But most importantly, who is ultimately responsible for the activities conducted under the aegis of this contract, either for its success or for its failure? Is it the Community Corrections Partnership Board? Is it your department? Is it the Board of Supervisors? Or some other agency?
Well, I mean, your question is, in my opinion, somewhat confusing. The probation department will be directly and actively working with BI in regards to running the Day Report Center. We will have immediate access to whether they're doing well or doing poorly, and that would certainly affect our recommendation in terms of whether or not we continue to have them provide a service for us or not. With their immediate reporting to us, then that will become fairly evident very quickly. And I will indicate that BI in all the counties that I'm aware of and the chiefs that I've talked to has an excellent reputation in terms of producing results. In terms of the oversight of the Community Correction Partnership, they have a very strong, significant interest in what is happening in terms of realignment and our plan and how it's implemented. They expect reports on a monthly basis in terms of how all of our programs are being run and being managed. And if there are concerns, no one is afraid to raise those issues, and those decisions are made jointly. Of course, we all work for, or primarily work for, the Board of Supervisors, and we continue to take your direction, whether you approve or not. Things as we move forward is certainly of interest to us.
Just a clarification, Mr. Foreman, you work directly for the Superior Court rather than the County Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
If I might, just
Please.
to answer your question, you, the Board of Supervisor, are ultimately responsible for the contract.
Right.
And that was, I
Okay.
think, a question.
The difficulty I have is that you use the terms doing well or doing poorly as related to the activities under this contract, but I don't know how we make that determination of doing well and doing poorly. I look at the material that BI has provided to us, and specifically on page 18 to 32, they talk in pretty glowing terms about what they've accomplished in Sedgwick County, Kansas, Napa Community Correction Service Center, New Jersey Board of Parole, Illinois Department of Correction. I suppose those observations are valuable, but I'm more interested in Shasta County than these remote locations. And I've said what I want to say. Thank you.
Supervisor Hartman.
I just have a comment to Supervisor Kehoe. Did you get the answer you were looking for? You were questioning the business day definition, but if you look on page 3 of 22 at the top paragraph, it describes that the DRC shall be operated by the consultant Monday through Friday, 8 to 8, and Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 5.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Linda.
It says that it's open 365 days a year. I wanted to make sure you saw that.
Okay, but the contract doesn't say that. At least the staff report doesn't.
Well, this
It
is
says
this the
excluding
contract?
county holidays.
Well, she's suggesting that you,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
David, go to page 3 of 23, the very top paragraph, the
All
last
right.
couple lines.
Responsibilities of the consultant.
Okay, very good. That's ambiguous to me. Thank you.
That's all I have right now.
Supervisor Baugh?
Following up on that, wouldn't it serve us to simply strike the words excluding county holidays from the contract? Because it does seem to be in contrast with the definition that you pointed out, Supervisor Hartman, later in the contract.
We can, but that's just a definition of what a business day is, and business day is not even used in the scope of work.
I don't know why that definition is in there.
I don't see why both are in there, but I'm not a lawyer. We could leave that up to the legal folks. Let me continue with my thoughts. And this is kind of tagging on to the question Supervisor Kehoe asked. Now, Mr. Lees, you've clarified that ultimately the Board of Supervisors is responsible for this contract, as with all contracts. But I wanted to just, for the sake of understanding myself, your chain of command. In July of this year, I'm looking at a board report where this board approved for AB 109 a Public Safety Realignment Probation Division Director. We approved salary resolution number 1409. I believe at that time you made the presentation that this person would be covering the day-to-day activities of AB 109. Do you have this person employed? And if so, will this person be in charge ultimately of the contract representing us, representing you, representing the people of Shasta County?
Yes, that position was filled immediately. It was filled by a person by the name of Penny Mossman. She is a probation division director, and she's responsible for the realignment division in the probation department. Her office will be housed in the Community Corrections Center, and her direct responsibility will be for managing the day report center.
Okay, and then to also follow through on the question from Supervisor Kehoe, he uses the word hard targets. I would use the word contractor accountability. I understand that we cannot extend their contract as a form of accountability, but meanwhile, we will have spent a tremendous amount of county resources. How are we holding this contractor accountable for services during the performance of the contract we're looking at, not considering whether we want to extend their contract down the road if they do a good job or a bad job?
Well, each of what BI has reported on and their success ratios and other areas were based upon the unique data from those areas. We will establish our unique data as targets. In fact, I have reported on them in the terms of recidivism as one measure regularly to you. Okay, in Shasta County, our regular probation recidivism rate is 24%. We see that as not as good as the rest of the state because the state average is around 17%. So one of our targets is for the realignment population has been to compare our numbers based to that information. BI's numbers and their rate of recidivism in particular will also be used, to compare their activities. In terms of establishing hard targets in the contract, I would agree. We haven't set up any hard measures. However, on page 8, there are a significant number of data elements that BI is used to collecting, will be reporting to us on a regular basis, and using that information, we will be able to evaluate whether they're accomplishing the goals that we expect from them.
And if you feel they have not measured up to your level of performance, is there a contract out here? Can they be terminated? Can the contract be terminated, not them personally?
No, there is contract language that allows termination, yes.
Can you confirm that from legal counsel, please?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Chief Foreman, we both agree on the subject of recidivism. That's it. That's the measure, isn't it? Ultimately, if we are going to achieve something and change the face, the culture of Shasta County and the criminal element, it is that we must reduce recidivism rates. This presents an opportunity for that. If you find my questions a little leery, it's because they're based upon information we receive, and information is the only thing we have to go by. And so I do question the lack of information presented in board reports, even from month to month with the information presented in the recap. And this could be semantics. It could be my lack of understanding, and perhaps Supervisor Modi, with his understanding from his job as a former police chief of the city of Reading, could help clarify this. But information like this, you made mention that because the jail was open, that in custody arraignments were significantly reduced, and that those elements have now been pushed to the, if I understand it, the plea disposition hearing. And yet, in a conversation yesterday with Melissa Fowler Bradley, she said that there are two elements, if I understood it correctly, in failure to appears. One is in custody, one is out of custody failure to appears, and that the out of custody failure to appears were almost 100% non-appearing. So what are we actually looking at? You need to help me understand it. To receive different information, it's the same thing in evaluating this contract you're talking about. We need to be able to rock solid, dead on target, be able to evaluate the information to make good decisions. And without that, our decisions are useless. So what are we looking at here?
But numbers are a difficult thing to make come together at times. One of the classes I took when I was in college was the title of the book was How to Lie with Statistics. And so from that point on, I knew that, there is an importance of using numbers to help determine whether you're doing well or not doing well. And as probation has moved towards the use of evidence-based practices, those numbers have become more and more important. Unfortunately, it's taken us several years to then grasp around the idea is that we are still talking the same language, because I can quote one graph versus somebody else quoting another graph, and we could be saying things that are accurate, but they're not exactly getting to the right thing. Sometimes it depends on how you're measuring it and how you're not. When I use the graphs, and I'll use the failure to appear one that we're talking about right now as an example, that is an area that we had no ability to know that we needed to come up with a target in the beginning when we were establishing our realignment plan. That bit of information that a number of people were failing to appear at the felony arraignment hearings came this summer when we were creating the new plan. And with that information, then we were able to say, well, how can we target our progress on that? And we found a way. There was some measures. Then we began to report on that. And in my opinion, because we knew now had a target, we could come up with a solution. With the solution included, simply speaking, we opened the last floor of the jail. Okay, by that being opened, if we can draw conclusions from A to B, that the numbers of the failures to appear at the failure arraignment hearings went down. So our graph indicated that we were on the right track. Okay. Following that, then we found some new information which was related from the courts that now that is being pushed down the road to the plea dispo hearings, which was subsequent hearings. So in other words, an individual, we effected a positive change in getting to the first hearing. They were still released either on OR or bail or however the courts wanted to manage that, but then they failed to appear at another hearing. Now that we know that that's a problem, then we can establish that as a target, and we are working with the courts to make a difference in that. Our pretrial release or our supervised release program will be that once we get that going, and we can work out the details with the court. Now, in response to Melissa Fowler-Bradley mentioning that problems have surfaced again in the court, that information I believe that she's representing to you has also come to myself last Monday and yesterday. They had a bad day, okay, 2 bad days in a row. And so that information to us is an indication is that in other words, has the capacity in the jail risen to the point that opening that third floor has lost its value, and now we're back at the same place of having to release individuals. And so it gives us a target for the sheriff and myself and everybody working with realignment to figure out how can we manage that. What are our charts saying? Our charts are indicating opposite for the last 3 months, but now Melissa is sharing new information, which gives us a way to move forward. So that none of the information is intended to mislead. It is targeting different areas, but it's all good information and gives us the opportunity to generate solutions and to affect some kind of change.
One final question. This is a tremendous expense based on what you understand is going to be available. Do we have the ability to sustain this expense into future years?
Well, I'm an optimistic person. I was always more confident than many in terms of the ability for the state to provide dollars to each of the counties for realignment. But the passing of Prop 30, the governor's tax initiative actually provided some constitutional protection in that for the next several years. We have a greater assurance that there will be money coming to the county to provide the service.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hawes.
Well, I know this is tough. I mean, we've never had to do this before. It's a new thing. And for us to sit back and just let it go, that's going to delay it longer and longer. And I think this day reporting center is very important to this whole AB 109. The jail opening the third floor helped for a while, and it's probably getting close to full now too, I would imagine. So that's why we kind of fell off the cliff in the last couple of weeks. So we need to get this up and operating. And it's a new program. We're going to have to watch it. You guys are going to have to watch it. We all are going to have to watch it. I'm telling you. And if something isn't right, we correct it, right? That's what we're doing here. So in my opinion, we need to get off and the dime here and get going so that we can get the thing open, because it's costing us. We're late at this point, and we all know that.
Supervisor Hartman.
Thank you. I feel that my colleagues have raised some very good questions, but like Supervisor Hawes says, I believe we need to move forward. I think there is a good scope of service in this contract. There's annual reports, written monthly reports of what we hope and expect to see. I think there's obviously a level of learning that we're going to have to go through, but to me that causes me to want to go even more with an experienced company that has done this, that has experience. I believe there's a good out clause if it's not working, if we can't afford it, if we're not getting results. That's clear in the contract. And I think that by waiting any longer, we're just delaying what really needs to happen and move forward and try to address these issues that are in our face. So I will move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
For relief.
Next item is from the county fire. It's to amend the county fire department procedure for volunteer response stipend. Chief Kyle.
Good morning, Rick Kyle, County Fire Warden, Chief of the Shasta County Fire Department. Before you is a request to amend a Shasta County policy and procedure which describes the amount of stipend a volunteer firefighter receives when they go to an incident. Currently, that stipend is at $6. It was implemented in 2006 and has not been adjusted since. Recent things that have come up to impact that stipend. Recently, the IRS has declared that to be income, and believe it or not, a response stipend now has IRS fingers into that pie. Also, the cost of fuel, depending on the time you ask and where you're located, has increased from 40 to 60%. All of our volunteer firefighters feel the impact of this situation, but especially the younger volunteer firefighters who appear to have the least stable income. And a fire department relies on its youth to get those tough jobs done. In 2010, volunteer firefighters responded to 2,310 Shasta County incidents and another 2,000 incidents in supporting other fire entities. Stipend costs were $41,000 last year. We have 193 firefighters at 68 roster capacity, 68%, excuse me. Profile of a Shasta County firefighter, the mean age is 42. I have firefighters in their 80s. The 36% of our volunteer firefighters are over the age of 50. That's typically the beginning when professional firefighters or career firefighters start looking at retirement, just based on the abuse of their bodies. Half of the current Shasta County volunteer firefighters have joined in the past year, and on average, the Shasta County Fire Department loses 14 volunteer firefighters, and we're trying to hold that number in the recruitment phase. We've done many things to try and bolster recruitment, and we're holding our own, but it's not going well. There was a finding in the recent Shasta County grand jury that said our stipend levels had room for improvement, and for these reasons, I've come to you for your support. I've also wanted to introduce Keswick Volunteer Company Chief Sandy Young. Sandy is also the chairman of the Shasta County Chief Officers Group, and he has a boots on the ground perspective and a few comments that I'd like to allow him to briefly explain to you to give you an idea of his perspective on this issue.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Young.
Morning. As you can see, I'm over 50. And I'd like to thank the county supervisors for their support for county fire. Supervisor Haas, I've seen him at numerous meetings, County Supervisor Modi. I'd like to thank the board for their continued support. County fire, as Chief Kyle was mentioning, was the fact that our age group is, there's a disparaging difference. And my goal as being the chairperson for the Shasta County Chiefs Officer Group was to try to embody the younger next generation of county volunteers, because these young men and women are going to be the backbone of the next generation of county fire. And I have a significant large size roster, and with that, I started noticing lack of responses from my volunteers, and when I asked them, it was a question of finances. And there's people right now in today's times are strapped as to making decisions whether to go to college class or respond to the fire. And the request that we're asking for is would significantly help with covering the costs of and getting the volunteers to respond as needed.
Thank you, Chief Young.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haas?
Well, my question is going from $6 to $10 enough? I know, it's tough to pay these bills, but we're asking these people to do a lot. And maybe you can look at it another year or two if we go this far, but I think ultimately we're going to have to go farther than this, because that's not a lot of money. If money's important, we need to address it, because I don't know how we're going to get fires out without you guys. CAL FIRE can't put them all out. I know that, and the U.S. Forest Service doesn't put any out, so we're stuck.
Well, Supervisor Hawes, I agree with you. I personally don't think that the $4 increase is enough. And I think we ought to consider actually doing $12 instead of $10, and that would be my recommendation. But maybe ask the CEO to weigh in to see if that's something he thought we could do or not. But for the reasons that you've stated, Chief Kyle and Chief Young, that you have young individuals who are making choices between can they afford to respond to a fire or pay for a college class they have to have, and now the fact that the IRS is taking money out of it as well and stuff, very concerning to me, not to mention the price of gas and other things. County Council, did you want to weigh in? Is that?
Just briefly on the issue of raising it to $12, I think if that is the inclination of the board, the best approach would be to have it direct staff to look at the matter and bring that back to the board for a future consideration.
Good. Thank you. Supervisor Kehoe.
I'm in agreement with my colleagues. I know you gentlemen have studied this exhaustively, but I'm also supportive of going to $12. And Mr. Lees, what would this make a significant impact on us to go to 12?
I think it's actually well worth the investment, but to be specific in answering your question, Supervisor Kehoe, what you're talking is about increasing the cost from a little over $50,000 to about $78,000. And so that's the difference in going from $10 to $12, and that's something that certainly is doable within our budget.
My evaluation was every dollar is about $13,000.
Yeah.
So
Every percent.
every dollar.
Oh, every dollar up, yes,
increase is
right,
at $13,000
correct.
total.
Would you gentlemen like to weigh in on this extemporaneous view of the board to raise it to 12 vis-a-vis 10?
Perhaps before you do that, I'd like to give Supervisor Baugh a chance to make some comments, and then we can come back to that.
Oh, I don't mind waiting.
Okay, go. Then you'd like to.
Well, I'll begin real quickly by saying the job that they do is no different than the job that a professional career firefighter does. We are fortunate to have a baseline of individuals that are willing to face the same risks. The recent report came out from the National Fire Protection Agency and also the U.S. Labor Statistics that came out today in the Modesto Bee, coincidentally, that indicated that 13.5 bodies per 100 working are injured as firefighters as opposed to 3.8 people injured in other aspects of industry. Our folks are facing those same risks as the people that are being injured. I think we have a remarkable safety record that deviates from that average, but that's another testament to the level of professionalism that these volunteer firefighters contribute to the effort. I will tell you that things are going well, but they can be better, and any help that you're willing to throw at them will definitely be appreciated by those folks who are contributing to their community.
You know, I just would add to in your report, you indicated that we've allocated 385 positions for volunteers, and we're currently at 193. So we're over quite a bit short of what you'd like to have to really have what you consider, I think, is full staffing for volunteers. And I think it just speaks to how difficult it is to hire volunteers.
Yes, it is.
Find volunteers, but also to find them in areas where we need them. We had to shut down the Platina volunteer fire company because we just quite frankly couldn't get enough people to man the engine, and so we need to continue to find ways to staff those positions. Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. And your thought of increasing it now to $12 instead of 10, I think is well received. It will send a clear message of support and encouragement. It will help you, I believe, in that recruiting process as we continue. Now, County Council, do we really need to bring this back? Isn't it just as simple as saying change the amount to $12, and we understand it's an increase in cost? Do we really need to go through this whole process?
We need to, because there are potential legal ramifications, and we need to make sure that we are on good, solid ground as far as the amount that's being proposed. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act, there are limits on how much you can provide a nominal stipend. And so we just need to make sure that we are on solid ground in that regard. So I would
Okay,
request
you
that
got
we
me
do
there.
Supervisor Hawes.
Thank you. Over the years, we've gotten really come up in the world on equipment. Now we need the men to operate it. So I think it's a great thing. We're almost going to lose them at Big Bend, too. I mean, we've got to do something to keep these people interested. And if it's just a little thing like this, let's do it. So bring it back and take care of it next year.
Let me ask Mr. Lees this, and I know maybe Chief Kyle would like to weigh in as well, but by postponing this till the January, does that
No.
cause a problem for your
It-
volunteers per se? And then the other second question with it is, if we approve the $10 today and increase it to $12 in January, is that an issue as well? I mean, I'm sure you don't want to do extra pay for it.
First of all, let's have Chief Kyle respond to the question on, by putting the decision off until the next meeting, does that do anything to hamper the firefighter, the volunteers?
And keep in mind, the next meeting is not till January 8th.
I'll tell my folks that if there's $12 in the wind, don't quit before Christmas, and
Okay.
perhaps we can make something happen.
Now, in answer to your question, this is actually not going to be effective until the new budget is set in July. So we do have some time. Now, we want to do it sooner than later because we want to send the message out that we're increasing it and it's going up. So I would like to move that. But I think, I appreciate council's recommendation to make sure all the Ts are crossed. But with that, we've had the discussion today, and we'll get direction from the board going forward. Once that is in place, we could bring it back, and it could be something as a consent item that says to approve.
Okay.
On
And
the next meeting.
It's a very good point. I've forgotten that this actually takes effect with July with the new budget.
New
So-
fiscal year.
So I think what we're really trying to send is the positive message is what we're trying to come, so.
Yeah.
So I'll look for some, I guess, consensus from the board to bring this back with the $12 stipend in our next meeting.
And thanks to all of you. I think it's very deserving.
Would that be,
That's fine.
that's okay to do it that way, Mr. Cruz? Yeah, okay.
Good. Thank you,
Well,
gentlemen.
Chiefs, thank you for taking your time and for waiting to the very end and for your presentation. And please take back to your volunteers the appreciation of the board of really what they do for our community every day. And they are sort of the unsung heroes out there, and we sometimes forget to remember that. So thank you both.
Thank you. Happy to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Young. We'll now move on to our scheduled hearings. A court challenge to action taken by the Board of Supervisors on any project or decision may be limited to only those issues raised during the public hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Board of Supervisors during or prior to the scheduled public hearing. Our first item is for Public Works, and it's a permanent road division for the Tudor Oaks Acres. Mr. Caffey.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Al Cathy, Supervising Engineer with Public Works. The item before you today is a public hearing to form a permanent road division for Tract 1999. As part of the conditions of approval, the roads within that subdivision required a maintenance entity, and the maintenance entity would be the permanent road division. So the only things we need to do today is conduct the hearing, close the hearing, and tally the ballots, and then this would be held over to a date uncertain in that this tract map would come back to the board for approval at a later date, and then the permanent road division would have the parcel charges set at that time, but we're waiting for the developer to finish the improvements to do that. So with that, I think we need to open the hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cathy. We open the public hearing on this item. Does anybody wish to speak to this action with the Tudor Oaks Acres Permanent Road Division? Seeing none, hearing's closed.
I have the ballot here for
We could tally the votes.
There is one ballot. The vote is yes, approve.
That's it, thank you.
Then we will bring this back at another future board meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. Item R11, Public Works, consider a property description amendment. Mr. Minturn.
Good morning, Chairman Modi, members of the board, Pat Minturn, Public Works Director. Before you today is a proposed abandonment along Wonderland Boulevard, north of the city of Shasta Lake. This is the old state highway alignment. It was 120 feet wide, dedicated at the time. The master plan, the circulation element of the general plan calls for a 60-foot wide easement in this area. So there's 30 feet of surplus right-of-way on each side of center line. This may look familiar to you. This came before the board about a year ago. And at that time, there was a defect in the legal description for the abandonment. Staff inadvertently wrote the legal description so that it only abandoned this portion here in front of this parcel. The same property owner owns this parcel and the larger parcel, and they had requested abandonment in front of both parcels. And so it was our intent to recommend that to the board, but the legal description contained an error. The legal description cited parcels 1 and 2. There's actually 2 parcels here, but it did not mention the larger parcel. And I will mention that the legal description had been written up in a form of a resolution and had been incorporated into the resolution, which is something that we didn't usually do and we still don't do. And the new legal description is an Exhibit A, a separate attachment, signed and stamped by the land surveyor that's responsible for it. So it creates a little more accountability. So I think I can assure the board that in the future, this problem will not come back. Okay. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Any questions? Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Chairman Modi. Mr. Minturn, any downside in proceeding with this?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Going to open the public hearing on this matter. You may wish to speak on the abandonment of this easement. Seeing none, the hearing is closed.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Minturn.
Thank you.
Next item is program additions and amendments to the Environmental Health Division fee schedule.
Good morning, Chairman Modi, members of the board. Carla Surio, Environmental Health Division Manager. I'm going to summarize the program additions in environmental health and recommend to adopt an ordinance to implement the cottage food operation, registration permit activities, and to amend the Safe Body Art program language in our fee schedule. AB 1616 is known as the California Homemade Food Act and was recently signed by the governor for cottage food operations and is expected to go into effect January 1st, 2013. It's amendments to the California Retail Food Code exempting these operations from facility requirements to allow non-potentially hazardous foods to be made in a home kitchen. Meeting requirements are self-certified by the operator or inspected annually by our staff. And second, the Safe Body Art Act, AB 300, went into effect July 1st. These regulations are chaptered in the California Health and Safety Code for facility permitting and inspection, practitioner registration for tattooing, body piercing, and permanent cosmetics. And so we're looking to adopt the ordinance that puts these 2 programs in the environmental health office. So if there are any questions,
Thank you. Any
please.
questions of staff? Supervisor Kehoe.
This is not an optional situation for us. Pursuant to state law, we have to proceed in these matters.
For the cottage food operations, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you were going to check on your tattoo, but
Yeah, very good.
any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. You may wish to speak to this item. Seeing none, close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Board of Supervisors will recess to a closed session to discuss the following items: a conference with legal counsel in the case of Hall versus County of Shasta, and also to conduct performance evaluations of county council and the county executive officer, and then meet with our labor negotiator, Mr. Gene Bell, to discuss labor contract talks. At the conclusion of closed session, reportable action, if any, will be reported in open session. We are recessed.